You are listening to the Adapt Performance podcast, where we aim to make elite level strength and conditioning accessible to everybody. I'm your host, Jordan Webster, and let's get into the episode. Yes, Jake, how are we doing, lad? You all good?
Good. Good to be back.
Mate, I dragged you on, kicking and screaming. I knew I'd get you, though.
Yeah, no, it's good. I'm looking forward. We've got some good topics.
Got some good topics. I've got the first topic I want to ask you, and I've had it on the back of my mind for a long time. Do you get hay fever with a moustache like that? Does it completely block all the pollen from getting in or not?
Do you know what? I had hay fever the past 2 years, but this year I haven't had it, and I think my moustache is the thickest it's ever been. So
it's thicker.
Potentially,
it's a barrier, mate. It's strong.
Yeah, I know.
It's very strong.
I can't really grow the rest of it, so I make it look like it's my decision, but that's all I can really do.
There's definitely a makeup pencil involved in the beard. I can see it.
Yeah,
I'm joking.
Yeah, the eyebrow dye.
There's probably a bit of irony in that one as well.
Yeah, for sure.
Love it. Mate, right, so I want to get straight into it because I know we've got some topics and I think we'll probably go in a million and one directions off the back of these. For anybody that hasn't seen Jake's or listened to Jake's first episode, go back and listen to that because you'll get a better intro. But the first thing I want to go into is changes in schedule for rugby. Okay, so how should we change our training, whether we are in off-season, pre-season, all those different things? You got any thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I think, as you can imagine, the off-season you can approach it in two ways. First of all, I've had people comment on my post before and be like, the off-season is off for a reason. You need to take time off, and it's like, you can do that if you want, but it is your best opportunity to make some serious physical progress because obviously one of the biggest things about training is you train a lot and you get fatigued, and then you can't perform very well, or you potentially have a higher risk of injury. And so when you're training or you're playing or you have to have that high level of performance, you can't put yourself under that much. Whereas in the off season, you can, effectively be working at maybe like 75% of your performance because you're just so fatigued that you build up all of this volume and do all this training and make a whole lot of progress. And then he's off a little bit as you come into the preseason or whatever, and you've made a load of progress. So I think that's one of the main things is you got to decide. You can do a bit of a hybrid approach. I think it is good to give your body a bit of a break. A week or two off could be really nice. Probably go on a holiday or whatever you want to do, but get into some structured training as soon as you can and make the most of those weekends. Now you've got access to Friday, Saturday and Sunday, so make the most of it, I say. So I tend to have a pretty simple way of explaining it and programming it. If I was saying just generally, how would I structure the differences off-season, pre-season, and in-season? So if we're talking about the gym side of things, off-season, might do 4 days a week, upper body, lower body, upper body, lower body. Pre-season, might do 3 days a week, upper body, lower body, and a full body session. And then in-season, 2 days a week, full body and full body. So we just start combining those upper body, lower bodies into full body all the way through. Probably the simplest and easiest way for you to split that up. When you are in your off-season, probably want to make the decision, like, are you going to focus more on the gym side of things, get bigger and stronger, or are you going to focus a little bit more on the running and the fitness? That will probably make a difference. So if you're in an off season where you do want to focus on your running and your speed, maybe you adopt a bit more of the pre-season kind of schedule. So instead of 2 days dedicated fully to legs, you have one of those full body days. Now you've got a day freed up on the weekend or whatever to hit some speed, accelerations, fitness, whatever it is. A bit long-winded, but I think, what do you think of that?
Mate, it ticks all the boxes. I think one of the things I really liked about how you explained that there was you mentioned performance a few times and like performance decreases and increases and that type of thing. I think for me, I always just think of the off season when I explain it is like, this is your development time. This, the objective here is to build some form of physical capacity, potentially skills as well with that, but it's development. Then when you get into pre-season, okay, it's preparation, like it's closer preparation. We're going to start to mimic the demands of the game a little bit more. And then when you're in the in-season, it's all about performance. It's all about how can we get you feeling fresh on that Saturday. And I think some of the problems that I've kind of seen with the athletes that we coach is the unwillingness, the stubborn feeling that we've all got where we're like, I don't want to change my training. Just because I'm changing out of off-season, I don't want to accept that I'm not making progress. And that's not always the case. I think you can still make progress year round, but I don't know if you've experienced that with your guys as well. that they just want to hold on to the upper lower or whatever?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, naturally, the biggest thing that changes when an athlete comes on board with me, it's not that they've never been to the gym before. It's that they've probably been to the gym before and they've been used to, just like everybody. I know what your first split probably was. I know what mine was. It was a bro split, right? And
Mm-hmm.
you get used to absolutely destroying a muscle group, and then it really hurting, and then you're going from there. Training legs a week or whatever. And I think as you get more sport specific or start working towards other things, you start to just move away from that. You go from maybe putting a bit more volume and fatigue into a really specific area to just making it a little bit more general and combining it all into the full body session. So most people come to me and they're like, they used to maybe doing a push pull legs, or at most training a body part, like upper body altogether or lower body altogether, and they just can't seem to wrap their heads around doing a full body session. Or most people can't even wrap their heads around doing an upper body and a lower body session. So yeah, I think that's the biggest issue. So people want to absolutely destroy themselves, and so then they take that all the way through to all of their training. That will be a struggle when you are in season and you have to play once a week as like a minimum, and you have to train twice a week. You've got 3 days there split apart, Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday. It's then very hard for you to find any kind of progress by just training a body part once a week. Like, split it up throughout the week, you're not going to be as sore, and you can still hit everything with the right kind of intensities and performance all the way through the week, basically.
Love
Kind of
it.
went off on a tangent there, but yeah.
No, mate, I think that's bang on. And I think that kind of leads us really nicely into the second question, actually, that we've got. And it is around your preferred plyos when it comes to working with rugby players. And I think, off the back of what you just said there, we all started at a bro split. It was chest tries, back buys, etc. So plyos wouldn't have even been a part of our thinking at that time. And I do just think that plyos are a really good first step for people, if they're just looking to experiment and train a little bit more athletic. So, yeah, do you have any preferred plyos or a way of thinking about that when it comes to rugby?
So I think the easiest way to introduce any kind of plyometrics is, like, one of my pet peeves is people who like look for a power session or a plyometric session. And I think as a rugby, so I know this is kind of off on it, but as a rugby player, I think there's so many other physical qualities that you've got to develop. You can't dedicate a whole session to just doing plyometrics or just doing power. In my opinion, you may as well get some strength in there or some fitness or some hypertrophy or whatever combined into that session. So that brings me on to, like, the easiest way for somebody, even if they wanted to stay with their push pull legs or their upper body, lower body, or whatever, start off with a jump and some hops or something, and you bridge that gap almost instantly. So I think that's really important. So either get the plyometrics in at some point at the start of the session, whether that is a sprint session, a field session, maybe even one of your training sessions for rugby, or a lower body session or full body session. So that's the easiest way to get that in. When I first started adding in plyometrics, or when I first add them into people's workouts, I like to keep it pretty simple. And again, actually, I'm going to change what we're talking about here, because plyometrics and maybe like a ballistic or a jump isn't necessarily going to be the same thing, right? So I might get somebody to do a broad jump, and a lot of people might kind of count that as a plyometric, but it doesn't have that short ground contact time, right? So we're not landing and then sending the force, reabsorbing the force, sending it back in the direction. So I'm going to kind of group those jumps also into this same thing when we're talking about plyometrics. But I'll get somebody to jump for height, I'll get somebody to jump for distance, and then I'll get somebody to hop or hit the ground with a short ground contact. I think if you can hit one of those either in the session or spread out through the week, then you're going to tick all of those boxes, I think. If you're already doing dedicated sprint training, you're pushing yourself forwards, you're doing it with maximum intent and with maximum speed. It doesn't get much more intense than that. So you're going to have elements of the plyometrics and the power and speed training just from the sprinting. But yeah, I would say maybe a broad jump or some kind of repeated broad jump, some kind of hop for short ground contact, or like a pogo hops or a drop jump where you're just trying to be as quick on the floor and as stiff as possible, and a jump for height. So within those three categories, you can have so many different options, and then you start making them harder. either stringing more along in one go, increasing maybe the depth or like the height that you're jumping from or landing, and making it unilateral. So yeah, there's a few different things there.
Love it, love it. I characterize them in. I think you explain it better than I do. I have like something that is for ankle, something that is like more knee dominant, and then something that is more hip dominant, which is basically those three things that you just kind of
Hmm.
said there. It's like for distance, for height, or for speed off the ground. Um, yeah, love it all. I think one of the things I'm a big fan of, particularly with people that haven't done much, I say athletic style training, but gym based work, not actually their sport, is learning the skill of jumping is huge. Like it takes a lot of time to feel really relaxed and to feel like you are expressing force really quickly. So I use quite a lot of like extensive plyo work, and for anybody that isn't familiar with what extensive work is, it's lower intensity, higher volume stuff. It might be that you do sets of 10 pogos, some lunge jumps for sets of 6 or 8, and then some broad jumps. Like you can mix it up. Like the variety is a big part of that. And the objective with stuff like that, if you haven't done it before, get some localized muscular endurance, get you used to the skill of moving. And ultimately, for me, is probably the biggest thing actually for people that are just gym bros is being relaxed and being fluid and just being like, just finding a little bit of rhythm with it. Do you use much extensive work? Is that part of your programming?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. So I agree. I think the ability to relax and then rearrange your body, get the right rhythm, get the timing, and then tense back up again to produce force in whatever movement that is. Whether it's like Olympic weightlifting, where you've got to kind of relax, get back underneath, or like you're doing some kind of swinging or throwing. Like you have to be a combination of relaxed and tensed at the same time. Or where you're doing something rhythmic, where you, like in the plyometrics, for example, you've got to time hitting the floor. Like you got to relax and then you've got to time and hit that rhythm. The coordination and the timing and the ability to relax. If somebody, like people talk about stiffness being really, really important, and it's both. If you're just stiff and you can't relax to get into the different positions quickly or at the right times, that stiffness isn't very useful. But equally, if you're only relaxed, you're obviously not going to be able to get stiff, produce the force or whatever. So yeah, it's I think the timing is a really, really important one, and that's where the extensive work comes in. I also think the extensive work is good for like tissue capacity stuff. So if you're trying, like for me, for example, I've noticed when I'm doing a lot of my running or my sprinting that I get instability around my ankles, or issues, my calves kind of flare up a bit. They feel really pumped, maybe a little bit of tendonitis. And so a priority for me isn't necessarily can I produce more force? Like that's not what's really limiting here, but it's my ability for that tissue to handle what I'm already doing. So build up the volume, do, maybe some more pogo hops, 10, 15, 20 reps. Whereas if we're jumping for maximum distance or jumping for maximum height, you're going to keep those reps much, much, much lower. And that kind of brings me on to like one of the bigger mistakes that I think people make with plyometrics or jumping exercises. Like they're jumping for height, they're doing a counter movement jump, but they're doing 3 sets of 15 reps. And the kind of the ideas right, or the ideas there, but the execution with it all is just a little bit wrong, and it doesn't seem like a big deal, but it is. Like it completely changes. You do a set of 15 reps for maximum height, or you're doing it to produce as much force as possible, and after like rep number 3 or 4, you just you're not getting any more kind of neural adaptation, right? You're just doing it kind of for the sake of it. So I think that's one of the biggest things people get wrong.
I think the interesting thing is I've had this conversation in the past, when I brought somebody's reps down from literally like I think it was a 12 to 15 set they were doing, and they were like, yeah, but what good is being powerful for 1 or 2 reps? I play rugby, like I've got 80 minutes. I need to be powerful. I need to be able to repeat that. And I think it's a really good thought process because we also go through that. However, it's like you're not going to develop the actual power at all if you do 15 reps of it. So it doesn't matter how many times you can not be powerful, So it's like bring it back to what you were just saying there. 3 to 5 reps is going to be your sweet spot for actually raising the ceiling of it. And then we can work on you being able to repeat that over time. And that repeatability, it might be sets of, 10, 15 or something, but that comes after you can actually produce that maximal output. Yes, guys, what is going on? Quick break in today's episode for me to remind you about ADAPT's online strength and conditioning coaching. Our mission really is to make elite level strength and conditioning accessible to everybody. And our service does exactly that. So you get access to everything: an elite level coach, physiotherapist, psychologist, nutritionist, a community to keep you engaged. Ultimately, what we're trying to do is give you everything you would ever need in order for you to achieve your goals. So if that is something that you are curious about, get in contact and we'll just have a no pressure chat where I explain everything, find out a little bit more about you, and we can decide whether you are a good fit for our program. Okay, without further ado, let's get back into the episode. Cheers.
Like, I am a strength and conditioning coach first, and I understand my role, and it's about using the training to build up those foundational qualities so that then when you get out there on the pitch or when you're doing your training sessions and whatever it is really, really specific, you've then got more capacity or you've got more output or to handle that better. And the lines get a little bit blurred because, you know, people try and combine like the roles. So when you're as the strength and conditioning coach, like your main job is to work on those capacities or build the fundamental side of things, build the strength or build the power or build the aerobic endurance or whatever it is. If you want to get really, really specific, like this is the exact, you know, work to rest ratios that I need to do in the exact specific movements, like get out there with your team and do that. That's the most important thing, you know. If you separate the two, you're gonna get the best adaptation, in my opinion. You know, separate. You get something that makes the most out of the reps you're doing in the gym, and then you get something that makes the most of the training that you're doing out on the pitch. And if you want to make it really, really specific, you do that out on the pitch. You do that out in the training sessions because that is as specific as it gets. Like, get out there with your team, with like your skills coach or the technical, the tactical side of things, so that they can actually give you some specific feedback on that as well, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yep, really good point to finish on, mate. Absolutely love it. Next one. This will be a good one, actually. I'm really excited. So, thoughts on overtraining and, you know, like what is optimal? How do you find that amount? How do you really differentiate that point between I'm training hard, training is going to be hard and I'm going to feel fatigued versus, you know, running yourself into the ground and kind of sacrificing those gains?
Yeah, so, I mean, this is something that's really been brought to the top of my attention with the current challenge that I've been doing. So for those of you that don't know, and Jordan, I'm not sure how much you know about it, but I decided for whatever reason to go in June, I'm going to train twice a day, every single day, without the day off. And without the days off, that's probably the thing that has been the hardest thing. Because a lot of people will train, you know, twice a day for 2 days. They'll do 4 sessions, then I'll have a day off or whatever. And it has made me realize really like what is recoverable and what you can actually adapt to. So the most important thing is that it is all relative. You can take one person doing like a quarter of the volume of weekly training, and then a few years later they're doing the same person, but they're doing 5 times the amount of volume, and it's the same person, but they've adapted over time. I think that people overestimate the amount of training that they can do straight away, and they underestimate the amount that they can do and recover from in the long term. So what's been interesting for me to see as like a case study or first hand from myself is that those first few weeks where I was kind of forcing myself to do more than I could really do, my heart rate has been up by like almost 10 beats consistently. My heart rate variability has been decreased by like 20, 30, 40%. My performance inside the gym, even though I've been gaining weight and eating more calories, I've been weaker in pretty much every single lift. My output in a lot of my running and everything has been worse. But week number 3, I've now started to adapt to it a little bit, and it has allowed me to. So with that, it has to be relative. You can kind of count it as overtraining, but it's going to be relative to how well you want to perform as well. So in the off season, you can be in a more overtrained, again, not really sure I'm a fan of the word, but be in a more fatigued state, and that's okay, because you don't have to perform. You're not being measured on your performance. You're doing it to get a specific adaptation or deal with a certain amount of training. But then you want to lower down that amount of training, and you don't want to over fatigue yourself when you come around to perform in the season. So it's hugely relative. It's hugely relative from the individual, the phase of the season, and what their training has been over the past weeks or months or years or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mate, I think some of the things you were saying there, like, hit the nail on the head. Just going back to the word of overtraining, actually. So I had a guy who works at Hallam. He's doing his research in deloading, overtraining, and overreaching, and he differentiates for the listeners. Like, overtraining is like a syndrome. It's something that is like globally you are chronically, fucking yourself up, and you're getting worse and you're getting worse. Like, and it gets you're not going to get to that point generally by accident. Like that's pushing through things for a long period of time. Overreaching is generally what you're probably doing, or what you're probably doing in the first 2 weeks. That overreaching and pushing your capacity a little bit further, potentially seeing a decrease in performance, and it's important to kind of figure out what the differences are between those. And the Adapt logo is the super compensation curve. So for people that haven't seen the logo before, that up and down as it kind of swims through, that is how the body adapts to things. You're at a baseline, you sink down as you train because you're getting a little bit worse, and then you start to recover and you end up a little bit better as a result. That happens after every single session. It happens over a week, over a year, over a lifetime. You're going to have these dips and you're going to come out of it. What happens when you do shit wrong is you cause this alarm phase where you drop below your baseline, and before you start to recover, you drop, and you end up with illnesses and injuries and stuff like that. So what have been some of your kind of key takeaways from this then, Jake? So for the listeners that play rugby, how can they use that information to really make sure that they don't overtrain and they're kind of putting themselves in a more optimal space?
Yeah, so brilliant. I was literally just, first of all, I didn't actually realize that's what the Adapt logo was. That's pretty sick, mate. That's pretty cool. Yeah, so also it's pretty similar to the Riverside logo, I just realized.
I thought that when I saw it.
But yeah, so I was literally thinking, I'm glad you asked that question, because I was going to butt in and start talking about that, linking it back to the phases of season. So session to session, how's my bench press on Monday? Am I super compensating? And the next Monday, hitting it at an intensity or volume, that I can then, that I've recovered from, and I'm now performing better. So it's really difficult. And I think it's one of the bigger things that coaches, let alone athletes, probably struggle with. It's stringing them all along together. Talking about what you can do off season, I think you can string along together a lot more of these phases, and put yourself under and put yourself in that alarm phase for a longer period of time. So you can string that out over weeks, I would say. This is kind of what I was saying, where I spent those first 3 weeks doing this training. I was in that alarm phase, and today I woke up, my heart rate was 5 beats lower, just randomly. My heartbeat, I had a good sleep, my heartbeat was 5 rates lower, my heart rate variability was like 26%. This is obviously from the whoop and stuff, but that's probably an indication that I have started to finally get above and super compensate. Taking it into your training, you can be, again, a little bit more fatigued when you're in your off season. You generally, when you're in season around those games, you might want to, what we call, front load the week. So at the Friday and Saturday, or Saturday especially if your game's Saturday, you want to be in that super compensation phase. You want to drop off that fatigue, and you want to be feeling your best, because that's what we're here to do, is on the Saturday is play your games. And then on that Monday, that Tuesday, that Wednesday, I would say, maybe that Thursday, you want to get in the majority of your training. That's what I would say for somebody who has to train on a weekly basis. Adding in for you university students, because I know when I was at uni, I had games on a Wednesday with the Bucks teams, and I had games for the club on a Saturday, and that was a nightmare. And I'm still searching for answers as to how best to work around that. You do have to start making sacrifices, whether it's one of those games, or whether it's some of those training sessions, or whether you just go, maybe I'm just going to maintain for the entirety of this season. I've been searching for answers for that. It's really, really tough. I'm sure you can agree.
Yeah, 100%. When I was at Hallam, we had that exact situation with the rugby lads there, and it was like, okay, Wednesday and a Saturday game. And some of the things we tried is, the first thing to say is it's not going to be perfect. It's never going to be a perfect scenario here. So we tried Monday being our heavier day. Okay, So we loaded up the Monday. That was probably our main opportunity that we found, because it's the furthest day away from a game either side. The problem then was most of them would have actual rugby training in the evening on a Monday. So it became a super high day. It meant that the Tuesday was like an accessory, get a little bit of a pump, do some conditioning if you want to do some conditioning, but keeping it relatively low. Wednesday, go in, smash it. If you have high minutes, great, low minutes, whatever, you can adapt from there. We would always do a little bit of a primer on the Friday. That was generally like the other go-to day. So it's a Monday and a Friday. Thursday was always a write-off because everyone's hungover and fucking sore. But that's generally how it worked for us. And yeah, I haven't found a better way of going about it. And every individual is a little bit different. But yeah, I don't know if you've got any thoughts there.
Yeah, no, it's I've found I think you've got to take each day as it comes. As a coach and as an athlete, I think it's really important. This is something that I work with one-to-one on. Is we've always got a contingency plan. We're always looking at ways to fill the gaps and add in a little bit more. So you kind of want to be like just be that one step behind, pushing the limits, and then as soon as you've got that little gap and you can add it in, I think that's a really good opportunity. And when you're looking at the long season, 9 months, if every 2 or 3 weeks you get the opportunity to have that extra session in there, that's the difference between you just spinning your wheels and staying the same and actually making some considerable progress. Maybe you add on, because of that session, I mean, sometimes I like to just make up numbers and throw numbers on these things, but let's just say because of that session, you get to add on a kilo to your squat because of that extra session that you've managed to do. Let's say you've got one of those every 2 weeks, you've potentially got the opportunity to add 10 kilos to your squat over the course of the season. That's a good amount of progress for somebody who was previously spinning their wheels. Just on top of that as well, one of the other things I like to say, and some of you guys might find this useful if you struggle with the motivation for your fitness. Every conditioning session you do, you shave a second off of your Bronco. Every single conditioning session that you miss, you add a second onto your Bronco. And now all of a sudden they've got some actual tangible numbers. And I'm going to be honest, it's probably not even that far off. I know I'm just pulling numbers from my arse here, but attaching something like that can be useful and actually make you feel like, oh, actually this is worth it. That extra session every single week, if it fits well into my schedule and I feel all right to do it, it is worth it in the long run if you're repeating it on a monthly or a weekly or whatever it is basis.
No, sick. I love it. Going back to the original question then, because I think that's one of the things we potentially didn't touch on. What are kind of the strategies? No, we've both bloody batted back and forth. But what are your strategies to get somebody to feel like, one, they're either listening to the body, like you've got a Whoop band on there, so you use Whoop. Is there anything else you kind of use to determine whether it's a go day or a slow day? Like, how does that work for you?
I ignore my Whoop on a daily basis. I'm going to be honest. I don't want to badmouth it too much, but if I wake up and I'm feeling good and my Whoop says that I'm not feeling good, I'm not looking at that. Well, sometimes you look at it and you go, oh, right, well, that's my day ruined or whatever, but I go out and I have a good session anyway. How I feel is way, way, way more important to me. If you wait for yourself to feel perfect, you are not going to train. You're probably not going to have one training session throughout the entire season. So there is an element of sucking it up and pushing through, but there are also strategies to work around that, shortening some ranges of motion, doing a box squat instead of a astrograph squat, doing a floor press or a pin press or whatever instead of all the way touching your chest, little things like that. I think, I always talk to my athletes on a pretty daily basis. After the weekend, so on a Sunday, that's actually a really good opportunity to find out where you're at and start planning the week from there. So if you had a really, really tough game and you're really beaten up and you're really sore, you probably know you're not going to be feeling perfect by the Monday, and then you can adapt either some of the range of motion or some of the volumes or intensities, whatever it is, for the rest of that week. But I don't have a set in stone way. A lot of it's really subjective.
I think the number one point here is get a coach. I'm just going to say it. I think that's going to be the thing. Like, because at least you've got somebody there that can challenge you on your bullshit, and be like, okay, you've just told me you feel terrible, but you still want to go in and do that, I know 6 sets of 2 or whatever you've got programmed. Like, maybe we should adapt that a little bit. And I think just having somebody there that can take control of it and take your ego out of your own training is just super important. And I've had that in the past, and it's a game changer.
Yeah, yeah, just with that as well. I think the second opinion is really, really important because, I mean, this happened with me, it's happened with my athletes, it's happened with other people that I know. You'll, you'll kind of be like, let's say you do feel like you are really fatigued. Instead of you just using that as an excuse to, not turn up, maybe you're hungover, maybe it's some extra little things. What I'm going to do as a coach, instead of going, oh yeah, just take your Monday off, which you might have done by yourself, I've got accountability to go, okay, well, you've told me this, this, and this is sore, this is wrong. We're going to change this, this, this in your session. You're still going to be able to do 90% of the actual original session. We're going to adapt the other 10%, and you're still going to actually get, I don't know, 9% of what we wanted from that 10%. You're hitting 99%.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's a really important point, mate. I think training's going to be hard. You're going to feel sore. It's just the way it is, and I think just finding a way to push through things sometimes is underrated. And there's always going to be two sides to this. Obviously, I'm not talking like the diehard guy that's just going to go and fuck himself up. But equally, I know it's quite a common phrase at the minute is don't be soft. I think that's an element of it as well. I think training is going to be hard. You are going to be tired. You are going to be sore. If you don't want any of those things, well, actually, I cannot think of a genuine solution because my nana, who doesn't move at all, she just sits on the sofa all day. She's also sore and she's also tired. That is being a human being. So at least make it worth it. You'll get the session in.
For sure.
Right, so number 4 then, this is really relevant for the time of year that we're getting into then. So sprinting or doing your interval training outside when it's mega hot. Have you got any tips, any solutions, any kind of go-to strategies that help you in that scenario?
Yeah. I think when we had a little bit of a heat wave a few weeks back. I think it was like earlier in May, just randomly when it was getting really, really hot. I made a video about this. So get something in early or get something in late. You're probably going to just eliminate that being an issue. The second thing is stay hydrated, and that isn't just water, but get the electrolytes in there as well, because if you're sweating a lot, and especially if you're like a salty sweater like myself, you need to replace them or you're not actually hydrating. What else have we got? I guess, wear the appropriate clothing. I usually, like, if it's boiling hot, I will pretty much just train in my shorts because, I don't want to go in joggers and a t-shirt. It sounds obvious, but these are important things. And find somewhere that's shaded. Maybe not necessarily for your sprints, but in those intervals when you've done your training and you need to recover. Oh, last thing on the intervals is maybe give yourself a little bit more rest, a little bit more time. So I like to usually, if I'm a good way of working out if I'm fully recovered, either between like strength training or sprints, or maybe I'm doing really intense anaerobic training, getting my heart rate up really, really high. I try and wait until my heart rate's at least below 100 before I think about even doing anything again. I would suggest if you're taking 3 minutes rest between some of your sprints or anaerobic stuff, maybe you take 4 minutes, but it's going to be individual for sure.
Yeah, sick. I think you covered them all there. What was it? Just to recap there. So clothing, stay hydrated, cold drinks, electrolytes, get the tablets, just salt in your drink or whatever, just something that's going to basically top you up a little bit. Shaded environments is going to be a game changer, whether that's just for your rest time. If you can just get under a tree in between, like, it'll just matter. I do think summer periods are just generally really good for speed training in general. You look at the Usain Bolts of the world and they're not doing it in Iceland and they're not doing it in Doncaster. I think there's some of my go-tos that I would recommend. The Cape Epic, which is like a mountain bike race in South Africa, they start their race at like 4 a.m. because of how hot it gets. Like, really do just, if you have the luxury of changing your training schedule to get away from the heat, like, it is such an important thing. Mate, you've just made me redundant there because I have no extra points other than just repeating what you said, and I'll just take the glory for it. I'll just crop them up and I'm like, yeah, I come up with this gold. Jake was there for smiles and the looks.
You know what, it would be, I'm sure there's some insight we could take out of like South Africa and how they train. I don't actually know.
Yeah, absolutely. And then I guess off the back of the electrolyte chat, this will make sense. So nutritional must-haves or hacks for rugby in general.
Okay. So the thing that I've been doing a lot more endurance training, and again, this is something that's just been at the forefront of my mind. Like I think about all these things before, like I've thought about them all before, but when you do it to yourself and you see it firsthand, it brings it all fresh in your mind, and you really start resonating with it and being like, oh wow, okay, I know that this is what you're supposed to do, and this has worked for some of my athletes, but when you see it working firsthand for yourself, it's different gravy. I'm sure you agree. Carbing up, intra workout carbs, especially when you're doing a lot of activity and maybe you're struggling to hit some of your calories. I kind of make my own combination now. So now it's really hot. Bit of water, like 500 ml of orange juice, a scoop of dextrose, and some electrolytes, which has like a range of the electrolytes, potassium, sodium, whole host of them. God, it just gives you a second wind. It gives you so much. And I don't, when people are coming over from like the bodybuilding background, when they do their cardio, you're thinking about just doing your cardio to burn calories. When you're trying to gain weight and get fitter, that is the opposite of what you want. Like in reality, you want to make sure that you're replacing all of the calories that you're burning. And when you have the carbs intra workout, you perform better. So you're probably getting a bigger adaptation, a better adaptation. So do that. You can sip it during your workouts. It digests really quickly, and it doesn't really take away like any of your hunger. So pre-workout, you can still have a load of food. You slam your orange juice or your dextrose intra-workout, and then post-workout, you have a load of food again. So that's my biggest hack that I would say. Aside from that, I think everybody already knows about your creatine or like your multivitamins or having some protein. Beta alanine is probably the biggest thing that isn't mainstream that has research behind it, that is really relevant for rugby players. It takes 3-4 weeks or whatever to like fully saturate in your muscles in the stores, and then you start to see the improvements similar to creatine. But instead of working in that kind of 8 to 10 second ATP PC system, you're looking at, correct me if I'm wrong, because I think they've done quite a lot of research into cycling and stuff that you might have seen. Anything that's like anaerobic to like the lower aerobic stuff. So from like, I don't know, 3 minutes up to like 20 minutes, I believe. So again, probably going to shave, or pretty much definitely going to shave seconds off your Bronco there. So if you're looking for little hacks, nutritionally, supplementation wise, as long as you're still doing your training alongside, that's going to be a real good thing. What do you think of that?
I love it. I love it. I think the carbs one, that'd be super important for a lot of people, particularly the guys that struggle to put on the weight, and want to do it in an appropriate way. It's just like, it makes sense because you're going to make that session more effective. I think your point around, okay, bodybuilders going to do cardio for the sake of, shaving calories off, I think that's really potent. I think that makes a lot of sense. Like, we're not just doing cardio to do cardio. We're doing cardio to get a performance outcome. We're going after something. So the better we can be fueled, it matters. I think the thing that I always come back to with a lot of our guys when they're chatting through like nutrition in general, preparation is just such a massive thing for them. It's like they get to after a game or after a training session, they're like, oh, I haven't brought any food. I haven't got a protein shake. I'm like, oh, like 10th time this month. It's like at some point you got to kind of look in the mirror and be like, well, the training session's going to happen. You're going to be hungry. Just bring something with you. A lot of our guys have just started basically doing their supplement stuff. So putting, the bag of my protein, the creatine, the protein shakers in the back of the car. Okay, it's there. You can just grab it straight away. You don't have to drive home 30 minutes, by which case you're probably just going to have dinner anyway. So I think that's been a good one. You just need to be careful that you are not just leaving your protein shakes in the back of your car for 10 weeks, because then you're just going to go through them like nobody's business. That's me.
Even nowadays, like when it's really hot, I've left it in there for like one day, and it's it's not good. It's the 5 Ps, isn't it? Preparation and planning prevents poor performance.
That's
and with the little hacks or like the little like nutrition or supplementation, some of these things can be pretty acute. Like let's say let's say caffeine. Usually take coffee. You usually have some caffeine before you train. You forget to prepare it. You now don't have it. You've instantly had some worse performance. So you're going to see that straight away.
Yeah, I've actually shifted a majority of my caffeine intake to caffeine tabs.
Okay.
So like 200 milligrams, you get them in like a bag of 100. The cheapest shit, to be fair, is fine. I just leave them in the car because, sometimes you don't want to chug a monster. Sometimes you can't be asked for the coffee, or there's no way to actually do it. And that helps. And I think I usually take like 2, and that's like a good amount, 400 milligrams. Kind of puts me at like 5 milligrams per kilo body weight, like does all right. I've taken a gram before. That's not a recommendation for people, but I nearly fucking died. I had 2 large coffees from Starbucks, 2 large filters, which is like 800 milligrams, and then took an extra tab because I'm a knobhead.
I think a lot of people have pushed the limits of caffeine before. I think you gotta push it to know what not to do again, because it's not fun, is it? You know, you do you think you're gonna die for about an hour? You
It's the worst.
contemplating life and all your decisions.
Yeah, bad news. But yeah, I don't think I've really got anything to add with her, mate. I think the preparation thing is just a thing. I think it's the thing. Most people know at this point that protein is good for, helping muscle growth and repair, tissue growth and repair. It's going to help you gain a little bit of weight. Carbs give you energy. They give you that ability to go. I think the tough love of the situation is we probably know all the information we need to know. You probably just need to implement it and stop, making excuses, which is probably the most horrible thing I've ever said. Well, there was a podcast with Ollie March on a while ago, and I just remember him saying, this, and I thought it was like super, super cool. But like, we don't need more information. People just need accountability and implementation. Like, those are the things. Like, I genuinely just feel like that's true. There is gaps in people's knowledge, and there's gaps in our knowledge, of course. But just having somebody there that's like a reason for you to keep pushing. Hopefully, it'd be yourself, but for a lot of us, it's just not enough sometimes. And then the implementation of like, well, okay, how do we take everything that we've gone through today, all that gold, and how do we actually put it in my scenario that's a little bit different to what they just said there? And I think that's the most important thing. Implementation and accountability, I think, is like super underrated. But from a coaching perspective, it's hard to sell. It's hard to say, I'm going to give you some accountability. You're going to pay me a monthly fee and I'm going to give you this thing. But once you feel it, you're like, oh, fuck. Like, that actually matters. Yeah, it actually matters a lot.
For sure.
Yeah, man. Beautiful. Mate, we have got through all our topics there, so I just want to thank you for your time. I'm going to put all your information in the show notes below. For anybody that is listening to this, share the shit out of it, send it to somebody who may benefit and you think would enjoy it. And then, as always, give me and Jake some feedback. If you enjoyed the episode, then I'll drag him back for a 3rd part. I know he is a crowd favorite, so I definitely want to do that anyway. But yeah, just want to thank you for your time, mate.
Pleasure, mate. Good, some good topics, and always good to chat, mate. Always good to catch up.
Beautiful. Okay, that is the end of today's episode, guys. Hopefully you enjoyed that. If you did, please do let us know and then share it with somebody who may find this episode interesting. Okay, see you next time. Cheers.